We are in the Twin City of Kingswear. So Kingswear is on one side of the River Dart, and it has these beautiful bright houses and also the train tracks for a steam train, which is pretty much for tourists, except Gail actually took it. The last 3 cars in this train contain the coal that actually the engine uses to produce steam.
So this is a chain ferry that crosses the River Dart. The way it works is there's pulleys that pull on a metal rope that lies on the river bed.
When the chain ferry gets close, the wire that's pulling on comes off the seabed, and it's just about to happen now, and pops up a bit. I'm looking at the chain ferry's wire that's attached to land, and you see it's got a huge shackle, but no zip tie.
There's a metal rope on both the port and starboard side of the vessel. I assume they can steer the vessel by pulling on one rope harder than the other. Here's a zoomed in image of the reels pulling on the metal rope to propel the ferry. One takeaway from this is, if you're a captain of a boat, you want to avoid the chain ferry.
This guy should not be cutting for the chain ferry. He's gonna get the horn. He's getting the horn. Come on. You, my friend, are an insult to yachtsmen. Oh my god, there's somebody else who's also going to go? You have to be kidding me. These people are like suicidal. That guy's supposed to be a professional. He's going right in front of the chain ferry. And then this guy, like, what, he puts it in low speed. He's not even, like, got it in gear. These guys are, like, the worst. Oh, final violator. This guy's really going for it the last second. You're in the city of ferries. What number ferry have you ridden now?
This is our 4th.
Just our 4th. We did the high ferry, the low ferry,
Yeah.
the Noose Marina ferry,
Oh yeah, 5th.
and the ferry from Didisham back to Noose Marina. Towards the mouth of the River Dart is just what you encounter when you first come in. Busy this morning because the breeze is light for a change. And over there is Kingswear. I'm standing in the highlands of Dartmouth. When a boat's attached from the stern and the bow, it's called being moored on the trot.
Bayard's Cove Fort was built in the 1500s to prevent the French from nicking stuff from the English. Even as early as the 1500s, some 500 vessels would harbor here as a home for fishing and trade. Later on, the harbor would get 2 additional forts, one on each side. Today's walk is to visit the Dartmouth side fort.
You may wonder why this motorboat has a bucket on the propeller. She's moored in a place that will eventually dry out at low tide. And a lot of motorboats here have these buckets to protect their propeller, so when it strikes the ground, it doesn't get injured.
Next to Dartmouth Castle is St. Petro Church, whose parish started in 1192. Dartmouth Castle is more fort than castle, and its job was to defend Dartmouth.
This is where I entered Dartmouth. It's very becalmed today. I dropped my sails probably out where that boat with no sails.
When Dartmouth Castle was active, the staff were not professional military men, but also bakers and such.
This neighborhood's called the Manor Gardens, and I would say they have a nice view. And in the distance, you can actually see a navigation beacon.
The lower ferry is not actually powered. Instead, they side-tied a small motorboat to it and moved the ferry back and forth. Haven't seen that one before, but British ingenuity is always fun to watch. Dartmouth is a very quaint ancient town. Of course, tourists swarm to it during the summer. The ferries in Dartmouth come in all shapes and sizes. The timing didn't work for us, but we missed the Dartmouth Regatta, which is really a 3-day festival involving boats and fairs. Don't these people getting off the ferry look like ants? We stayed in Dartmouth for almost a week. During that week, we crossed the Dart River so many times, some by chain ferry, which required a lot of walking. Tonight, we were escorted door to door by the ferry from our marina. Nos on Dart Marina is probably the best marina we stayed at by far this summer. The only flaw It is a good hike from downtown Dartmouth. When the ferry is running, it makes it an asset, not a liability, to have such a long trip. I do regret not having been able to try the on-the-trot dual mooring ball system. It looks like it takes a bit of getting used to before you become an expert. The other technique that I want to practice is ferry gliding, which the locals do to dock their sailboat.
Last night when the breeze started getting into the 20s and we were being pushed hard on the dock, I fished out our new purchase, which is the Fender Tex inflatable fender. And it's a kind of a ball fender, but a squished ball. And it really was great because when it was blowing, all this whole row of fenders was taking some weight, and so no one fender was getting picked on. It will easily deflate and become thin as a pancake. There's a little wake coming off the fender right now because the current's going so strong. The current is absolutely ripping at our dock. And what happens when it's ripping is you try to complete your turn. Let's go walk out to the bow. And there's a pretty wide fairway. And you try to complete your turn. Before you know it, you get to meet these guys. Well, here we are, looking back towards Dart. So we're looking towards Dartmouth here, on the Dart River, but we're quite far away from it now, about 3-4 miles. You can see the size of all the boats going on. The ocean's probably about almost 5 nautical miles from where I'm standing.
This ferry provides the continuation of a very ancient crossing of the Dart. The crossing was part of a Bronze and Iron Age route joining the waters of Torbay at Churston Cove with Halwell, the important regional center of that time, before Totnes came into being. Greenway Quay, complete with its ferryman's cottage, provides one of the most picturesque scenes on the Dart estuary. Queen Victoria was one of the first tourists to cruise the Dart estuary for pleasure and inspired her to identify the River Dart as the English Rhine. The quay, now owned by the National Trust, is of local and national importance as one of the last surviving working quays on the Dart.
There we go, Gail. Another boat for us to ride. We are at the high point of Didisham, looking down at the River Dart. Very picturesque collection of homes, all labeled with their former usage. Bakehouse, ferryman's house, brewer's house.
After a 3.5-hour hike, we made it to Didisham, explored the town, but now heading home by ferry. I would love to own that riverside structure, boathouse or house. Today we are hiking from Dartmouth to Brixham on a coastal path that will be full of great vistas. The hike is about 17 kilometers or 10 miles and has around 600 meters of climbing or 1,800 feet. We were confident that the hike would be achievable until we spoke to a much younger local friend who said it was very tiring. But we were not deterred and pressed on with the idea of the hike. During our first kilometer, we ran into a gentleman who said, "You're doing that hike? Do you have enough equipment? Do you have enough experience?" He pretty much eulogized us and that we would not make it.
We have a little climbing left to do. Here's Gail. And there is the hill.
We have to climb, and it goes up and up. Look at those little ant-like people going up the hill. There's just 2 of them there, but you have to keep going up that ridge. And then there's 4 more farther up the ridge. But that's not it. You have to keep going up and up to the final 2 people. We made it to Brixham for a fish and chips and a nice cab ride home. Brixham has a replica of the Golden Hind. It was Sir Francis Drake's vessel, which we'll learn more about in next episode when we visit his hometown in Plymouth.